There is a moment every off-season where the noise fades, the rumors slow to a whisper, an opportunity quietly knocks when nobody is really listening. This, right now, is that moment for the Toronto Blue Jays. While most fans have been distracted by free agent signings, depth moves, and tidy additions around the edges, something far more intriguing has been forming beneath the surface. A golden opportunity, not wrapped in headlines, not paraded across television panels, but sitting there patiently, waiting for the right call to be made. Coming off a busy winter, the Blue Jays have undeniably improved. They have addressed weaknesses, added balance, and stabilized parts of the roster that needed attention. And yet, there is still a sense that something is missing. One more piece. One more spark. One more swing that can tilt a game and change the way opposing pitchers sleep the night before a series. Recent reports have begun to hint that if the Jays want that final upgrade, it is not coming through free agency. It is coming via trade. And that is where today's story truly begins. Welcome back to the Blue Jays Report, and before we dive any deeper, take a second to like the video, share it with a fellow Jays fan, and subscribe to the channel. Your support has been unbelievable, and with spring training creeping closer by the day, this is the place you want to be. Now, settle in, because the player we are about to talk about is not one I have covered before in this context, and the more you sit with it, the more it starts to make unsettlingly perfect sense. Cast your mind back for a moment, not to yesterday, but to July of 2025. The trade deadline hums with its usual chaos, executives pacing, phones vibrating, and names being whispered behind closed doors. Among those names was O'Neil Cruz. At the time, multiple reports confirmed that the Pittsburgh Pirates were listening to offers. They did not trade him, but that distinction matters less than you might think. Listening is the first crack in the door, and once that door has been opened, it is very difficult to shut completely. The Pirates are not an organization known for financial bravado. They do not hand out lavish extensions, and history tells us they are far more comfortable trading talent than paying to retain it. Time and again, we have seen them move players just as their value reaches a crossroads. O'Neil Cruz sits precisely at that intersection right now. And suddenly, in quiet corners of the internet, whispers have begun to resurface. O'Neil Cruz to Toronto. At first glance, it feels bold. On second thought, it feels inevitable. There was a tweet that stopped me in my tracks, suggesting that the Blue Jays trading for someone like O'Neil Cruz would make an enormous amount of sense. Not because he is a finished product, but because he is not. Because he is the type of player who, under the right guidance, could become something frightening. Dave Popkins has earned immense trust after what he helped unlock in this lineup last season. If there is a hitter in baseball screaming for refinement rather than reinvention, it is O'Neil Cruz. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. The surface-level numbers from last year are not flattering. A .676 OPS. Strikeouts piling up. Inconsistency that frustrates as much as it excites. But baseball is not played on the surface alone. Dig into the peripherals and you begin to see the outline of a monster pacing behind the bars. Cruz sits in the 100th percentile for exit velocity. When he hits the ball, he does not just hit it, he attempts to send it into a different postal code. Few players in the sport generate that kind of raw violence off the bat. He is, undeniably, a true outcomes hitter. He will strike out, and he will strike out often. That is his kryptonite. But when he connects, the sound alone makes pitchers flinch. The Blue Jays, a team built on contact and control, do not need him to become something he is not. They need him to become slightly more disciplined, slightly more selective, and suddenly you are looking at a player capable of altering games with a single swing. What makes this feel like a buy low opportunity is that his career to this point has not yet matched his potential. His best season came in 2024, and even then, the overall production fell short of superstardom. That gap between expectation and reality is exactly where shrewd front offices pounce. Add in the fact that Cruz brings almost 40 stolen bases to the table, elite sprint speed, and an arm that grades out at the very top of the scale, and the appeal becomes impossible to ignore. At 6'7" and built like a linebacker who learned how to run like a sprinter, O'Neil Cruz feels like a player created in a laboratory. He has already transitioned from shortstop to center field, showcasing his athleticism and cannon arm, and the idea of sliding him into left field in Toronto is nothing short of intoxicating. Imagine that outfield defensively. Imagine the chaos on the bases. Imagine the electricity he brings to a lineup that, while strong, could use a jolt of unpredictability. Naturally, the question becomes price. One proposed framework floating around involved names like Nathan Lucas, Eric Lauer, and Jake Bloss heading to Pittsburgh. On paper, it feels light, but frameworks are not final offers. Swap pieces around, adjust the balance, and suddenly it becomes more realistic. Perhaps the Pirates want Major League-ready talent. Perhaps they want pitching stability. A deal centered around an MLB bat, a controllable starter like Jose Berrios, and a high-end prospect could very well make them listen. Would the Blue Jays do that? That is the debate. It is not cheap, and it should not be. But this is where having a strong farm system changes everything. The Jays are no longer hoarding prospects out of fear. They have depth. They have options. They have at least 3 consensus top 100 prospects in Trey Savage, JoJo Parker, and Arjun Amala, with more knocking on the door. Spending some of that capital to acquire a player with Cruz's ceiling is exactly what well-run contenders do. And yes, there is risk. Strikeouts do not simply disappear. But speed plays. Defense plays. Raw power always plays. And under a coaching staff that has proven it can optimize hitters, the upside here is staggering. He adds something this roster lacks. He adds thump. He adds stolen bases. He adds fear. Sometimes, you need a little chaos in a lineup built on order. As we approach spring training, the broader context only makes this more compelling. The trade market is fluid. Names like Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar continue to hover on the periphery, though recent reports suggest those prices may be steep. Toronto's front office has shown time and again that when they move, it is often quietly and without warning. Do not be surprised if something emerges seemingly out of nowhere. Meanwhile, the prospect pipeline continues to strengthen. Multiple evaluators now agree the Blue Jays possess at least 3, and possibly 4, top 100 prospects in baseball. That reality provides leverage, flexibility, and confidence. Whether the move comes now or later, this organization is positioned to strike when the moment feels right. So here we are, standing at the edge of possibility. O'Neil Cruz may never wear a Blue Jays uniform. The Pirates may decide to hold. Another team may step in. But the fact that this conversation exists at all tells you everything about where Toronto stands. This is a team with ambition, options, and the courage to gamble when the reward is worth the risk. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Would you make the call? Would you push the chips in for a player like O'Neil Cruz? Or would you play it safe and trust the internal options? If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report. Spring training is almost here, and this story, one way or another, is only just beginning.